In the early 20th century, an unknown force started to torment drivers on a stretch of road in Dartmoor. The locals claimed a pair of ghostly, dismembered hands intervening with the operation of their vehicles, causing them to careen off the side of the roads, resulting in mild to fatal mishaps. Join us as we attempt to unravel the spectral entity known as the Hairy Hands on Crazy Cryptids. The legend took place on the narrow B3212 road in Dartmoor, a mountainous region in southern Devon, a county in southwest England. According to the stories, the hands appear suddenly, steering the wheel of a car or the handlebars of a motorcycle, and then force the victim off the road. In 1921, Dr. E.H. Helvey, a medical officer at the nearby Dartmoor prison, lost control of his motorcycle and sidecar. Two children under his care were seated in the sidecar recalled that he was fighting against something for control of the bike while yelling at them to get to safety. He told them to jump before he was thrown from his bike and broke his neck and died. Months later, an army captain lost control of his motorcycle. He was described by the locals as being a very sensible rider, and while questioned, the captain stated, "It was not my fault, believe it or not. Something drove me off the road. A pair of hairy hands closed over mine. I felt them as plainly as I ever felt anything in my life. Large, muscular, hairy hands. I fought them for all I was worth, but they were too strong for me. They forced the machine into the turf at the edge of the road, and I knew no more till I came to myself, lying a few feet away on my face on the turf." A few years later, British folklorist Theo Brown was told of an encounter from her own mother who was staying in a caravan around half a mile from the B3212. She recounted, "I knew there was some power very seriously menacing us near, and I must act very swiftly. As I looked up to the little window at the end of the caravan, I saw something moving, and as I stared, I saw it was the fingers and palm of a very large hand with many hairs on the joints and the back of it, clawing up and up to the top of the window, which was a little open. I knew it wished to do harm to my husband sleeping below. I knew that the owner of the hand hated us and wished harm, and I knew it was no ordinary hand, and that no blow or shot would have any power over it." A more recent encounter, on January 16, 2008, a man was driving from home from work on the B3212 road late at night. While on the road, his skin began to feel cold and clammy for no reason. Suddenly, a strong sense of illogical dread overwhelmed him. The atmosphere within the confines of his car began to feel oppressive and evil. His hands went numb and thought he was having a stroke. Then, a huge pair of hairy hands clamped themselves over his own. Suddenly, the disembodied hands attempted to force his car off the road and onto the dark moors. The ghastly hands tried 3 times, but he managed to fight off the attempts each time. The hands suddenly disappeared in a flash of light that illuminated the inside of the car, leaving behind a strong sulfuric odor. The driver immediately sped up and didn't stop until he reached a service station on the M5 motorway. Skeptics also questioned the stories and the validity of the eyewitnesses by stating that most of the accidents were caused by drivers who were unfamiliar with the narrow roads. Perhaps the momentum of their speed caused them to misjudge the road and lose control of their vehicles. But what about the hairy hands themselves? The origins of the hairy hands are murky at best. In the 1800s, there were a number of powder mills that manufactured gunpowder around Dartmoor. Naturally, when dealing with something as volatile as gunpowder, it was extremely dangerous work. The slightest spark could set off a huge explosion, so the workers wore rope-soled shoes while working, as steel-studded boots can cause sparks when they come in contact with rocks on the ground. Among the workers at one powder mill was a blacksmith who fixed and maintained the machinery around the mill. One evening, after drinking with some friends, he returned to the powder mill. Unwittingly, the blacksmith wasn't wearing the right footwear and still had his steel-studded boots on. Surely enough, a spark caused an explosion, and what remained were his large, hairy hands. Legends say that to this day, those hands are the ones that haunt the Dartmoor Road at night. While the story could be true, some people believe that the hairy hands are a variant of the Will-o'-the-Wisp, a ghostly light that spooked travelers for generations. A few speculate that the hairy hands are a form of gremlin, a goblin-like creature that sabotaged airplanes and electronic equipment during the 1940s and 1950s. The hairy hands from witness accounts show a pattern of being a malevolent ghost, cold sensations, the stink of sulfur, and the feeling of dread. In terms of scary tales, a sudden or tragic death are tropes in an origin story of evil spirits, so it's not too hard to imagine a story of a blacksmith dying in a tragic explosion, leaving only his hands, may result in a vengeful, restless spirit. While somewhat hilarious to the uninitiated, largely due to old wives' tales that say hairy hands are a result of constant masturbation, there's definite guttural fear about evil ghost hands out to kill you. Despite it all, the legend of the hairy hands is part of the folklore and culture of Dartmoor. The B3212 is a favorite destination for tourism and haunted tours. With reports of sightings in the 21st century, it seems these hairy hands has legs.